Okay, good. To anyone viewing the debate at home, please note that attendance was optional given various circumstances in which we find ourselves, so just keep that in mind. I'd also like to give a quick content warning. This might not necessarily happen, but just based on the statements that candidates submitted, I think there's a chance some people will be referencing sexual violence or things of that nature. So this is just content warning for anyone who might be watching later or might be watching now. Anyway, as far as the format, we're going to start with the candidate for VSA President and then proceed in the order that was sent out by the Board of Elections. I think you all should have gotten that email. Each candidate will be allotted 30 seconds for an opening statement, which should include your name, the position you're running for, and your pronouns. Then we'll ask each candidate 2 questions with 1 minute allotted to answer per person. And if it's a contested election, each candidate will also have 30 seconds to respond to the answers given by other candidates if they want to. You don't have to. After that, we'll take questions submitted by people in the chat, like Jess said, and then if there's time permits for that, obviously. And after all the questions, candidates will each get 30 seconds to give a closing statement. Okay, so Juliet, if you want to share the timers, we can get started with the candidate for president. Okay, so Gabby, if you want to give a 30-second opening statement with your name, pronouns, and the position you're running for.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby James. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a class of 2022 anthropology and urban studies major, and I'm running for the position of VSA president.
So now we're going to move on to questions. As I said, you'll get 1 minute per question. So the first one is, the pandemic has upended and reshaped the student experience, balancing in-person versus remote learning, pandemic regulations, illnesses, and vaccination. Next semester, we'll return to fully in-person learning, but we are still uncertain what this new normal might be. How will you use your position as student body president to help students adjust to next semester, and what do you see as VSA's role in that adjustment?
Thank you for your question. I think as we adjust into what a regular year looks like, it's going to take a lot of work on every student's end. And I think the VSA should be very integral into what that looks like, whether it's programming or whether it's just providing resources or just making the resources known as to what that looks like. I read a lot of the candidate statements that the people running for their positions have submitted, and a lot of people have a lot of ideas of how to make this work in general, whether it's pandemic related or whether it's related to student life and academics on campus in general. And I think we have a lot of work that we can do to make sure that students are able to be able to adjust and be able to live and learn in an environment that's living in sort of adjusting to what the pandemic has done. So I think we have a lot of work to do there, and I think the VSA has a lot to contribute as well.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is, as the president, you help run meetings and you manage internal VSA operations, as well as setting the tone for any constituents who might attend those meetings. So would you mind just telling us a bit more about how you will manage difficult, passionate, and important discussions while still maintaining a friendly atmosphere and all that?
I think right now in the VSA, we're working on a lot of restructuring and revising a lot of what the bylaws and the Constitution look like to make sure that they work and that they're transparent and clear and in the best interest of the students in the VSA and the student body. So I think as long as we go by what's written in the bylaws and what's, I guess, appropriate for a meeting in the VSA, recognizing that we're all students working on our academics and being involved in the VSA, and other members of the student body who come who are also very passionate about the organizations and that they're involved in, as well as the work that they're in, and recognizing that we all want things done and we want Vassar to be held accountable for whatever kind of adjustments that we make into our living and learning environment. So anything that a student comes forward with that's involved with constituent concerns or just suggestions to what can make the Vassar environment better is welcome. And I think we'll be able to have a productive conversation about whatever that may be.
Awesome, thank you. We're a bit behind schedule, but Jess, did you get any questions from the chat?
No, there's no questions in the chat, but I would just remind everybody who's viewing that you can submit questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and I can ask those to the candidates.
In that case, I think since, as I said, we're a bit behind schedule, we can go straight into your 30-second closing statement, Gabby.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you everybody who's here at this debate as well, the candidates and the students who are in the audience. Everybody's really busy right now, and I appreciate the time for coming to see who your next student representatives will be. As the only candidate running, I would be honored to serve as your VSA president, and I hope that as we transition to the next academic year, the VSA will be able to provide programming and resources to make sure that we have a productive and positive year in the VSA and as students.
Awesome, thank you so much, Gabby. Next up, we have the VSA Vice President position, for which we have 2 candidates. Again, we're going to start with 30-second opening statements for each candidate, and we're going to start with Motad on 30-second opening statement. When you want to start, remember to include your name, pronouns, and the position you're running for.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Motad. I use he, him as pronouns. I'm a rising junior from Karachi, Pakistan. This is my 2nd year in the VSA. I'm currently serving as college planning senator. I serve on committees such as financial aid and admissions. And, you know, I've been a real active member in the VSA, but at the same time, me and my friends feel like we can barely ever get any work done from the admin. And the reason I'm running to be a VSA Vice President is to actualize the role our college governance should have in actually serving students. And I'm really excited to gain your support.
Awesome, thank you. If our other candidate, Ryan, would like to give a 30-second opening statement as well.
Yeah, so my name's Ryan. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm running for vice president, and I'm a poli-sci and Africana double major, getting the education certification. I'm running because of a situation that occurred on the track team about a month ago, which made the entire team painfully aware how badly Vassar fails its survivors and how desperately we need a change. I believe we owe it to our students to feel safe on this campus, and I believe we owe it to our survivors to feel supported. And I believe that I can make a lot of that change as vice president, and I believe that together we can do significantly better by our survivors.
Okay, awesome. We're going to start with the questions. And as I said earlier, the way the questions work when there's more than one person running is each person will get 1 minute to respond. Then we'll go back to the first person who will get 30 seconds to respond to the other person if they'd like. And then the second person also gets 30 seconds to respond if they would like. Okay, and this first question, we're going to start with Ryan. And the question is, this past semester has seen lots of discussion about organizational restructuring for the VSA. If any, which of these initiatives would you like to see implemented next semester? How do you balance this restructuring of the VSA with the week-to-week business of supporting students and orgs?
Yeah, so the VSA bylaws and the Constitution are currently a mess and absolutely need to be revised. And this year led to a lot of confusion and a lot of conflict that I think had there been clearer bylaws would not have happened, right? And so I think we definitely have to go through and talk about, you know, what we still have, what we still use, and make the bylaws make sense to students and even the people in the VSA, right? In terms of initiatives that I support, I think there was a legislative process implemented this year, which is a huge boon to the VSA. I think it was desperately needed and needed to make Senate more than just a rubber stamp, as it has so often been referred to. And I think while that is true, other initiatives like disenfranchising exec board or eliminating exec positions entirely go too far and were the results of conflicts that I believe can be resolved if we just work together and make the bylaws clear towards supporting students. So yeah, to answer your question, I believe we need to clear everything up more so than change things.
Awesome, thank you. Motad, you've also got 1 minute. If you'd like, I can restate the question or up to you. You're good? Okay.
Thank you so much. I've been working on reform in the VSA for almost the past year now, and I'm really passionate about this topic, and I have a lot of visions. And currently we just passed, Joe, one of my fellow members, he plus passed 27 amendments to the bylaws, including the legislative procedures that Ryan mentioned. So that's something that I've really been working on. And ultimately our goal is to see a working institution. So those bylaws, while there's a lot of nitty-gritty into them, like ultimately, the goal is to make it democratic. Currently, the way it runs is that VSA is often a one-man show. People in power, for example, in VSA vice president positions, they run the entire show, write the bylaws, enact the bylaws. If I were to be elected, I would continue the mission to make it more democratic, give senators back power. Instead of running the show on my own and seeing changes that I want, I would rather enable the entire Senate to be a really powerful body and be a collective. And that's something that I've been working towards for the entire last year, combining efforts on campus and making sure that we're a collective democratic body.
Awesome. Now, if you guys would like, we can go back to Ryan and you can have 30 seconds to respond to anything Motad said, but you can also feel free to pass on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard to disagree with making the VSA democratic, right? That's the entire point. But I would say there are ways to increase Senate's power without disenfranchising other members of the VSA. For example, the legislation that was just introduced, right? Currently, any member of VSA can introduce legislation, right? Personally, I would be in favor of making that a power exclusive to senators to give senators an explicit purview, right? That doesn't have to include disenfranchising the exec board.
Oh yeah, feel free to take your 30 seconds of response as well.
Yeah, just to respond to that, that's a great point, and I agree, like VSA exec has an important role, but the ultimate reason why we want to separate these two things is to make sure that the people enacting changes are not the same ones who are envisioning them, because ultimately people in power want to like do things to get reelected rather than to see their constituents' needs met. And changing who makes decisions versus who puts those decisions into practice really changes up the dynamic and makes sure that like it runs on student cooperation rather than, you know, people running for election again and again.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both very much. The second question we have is a different thing, and this time we're going to start with Motad. You'll have a minute to respond, and it's all the same format as the last one. And this question is, you both mentioned in your candid statements many things you wish to improve or have changed about campus. Many of these changes will require administration approval, financing, organizational support, and work to be enacted. How do you plan to most effectively communicate your goals and work with the administration to make sure the changes you want to see implemented are implemented?
Thank you. I've been in constant communication with the administration for the last year, or the last 2 years, bringing them concerns up from the student body. And the reason why I feel like a lot of changes go unchanged is not that the admin doesn't know about them or doesn't know about solutions, but rather has reasons like not wanting to spend more money, to want to ignore student voices. And the reason why I'm running for VSA is to make sure that like anytime admin is, you know, like not meeting our needs or not meeting our rights or like, you know, is doing any other type of atrocity, the VSA has the power to hold them accountable. And essentially over the last year, we've never seen VSA, you know, like actually hold admin accountable to the various things it does and various ways it disenfranchises students. And if we had a system where every time admin didn't respect students, we could call that out and we could weekly like make sure that we could hold admin members accountable, we would see a lot of changes being made there, because currently right now, marginalized students are continuously ignored by admin just because VSA doesn't hold admin accountable otherwise. Thanks.
Okay, now Ryan, you also have a minute to respond to the same question.
Yeah, so Motad makes a good point. If you're not somewhat frustrated by administration over the last year, you haven't been paying attention, right? They have been ignoring students or making decisions that are not in the best interest of students because fundamentally they are not students, right? Their interests are not ours. And while I think it is important for transparency to be present with administration so that we know what's going on and we know why those decisions are being made and how they're being made, I think the idea of admin accountability is a dangerous one, because the VSA is, you know, a student-run organization. Fundamentally, administration is going to run the college. It's very hard for us to say that we are going to go to this college and run it, right? That's simply too much to ask of students, and I don't think there's any way feasibly for us to hold administration accountable other than mass protest, which is why transparency is so important, right? We need to know what's happening so that when bad things happen, we can respond to them. But with that said, the VSA is not going to be equipped, and I don't know if it ever will be equipped, to hold administration accountable by itself.
Motad, if you'd like to respond for 30 seconds to what Ryan said.
Yeah, I think our college governance actually depends on informed student voices and accountability. In fact, we have a system of shared governance, and whenever admin is, you know, committing any sort of like issues, for example, right now, President Bradley's like tenure is up for review. The trustees are specifically reaching out to students to find out what is up and to hold admin accountable. So admin accountability is something that's part of student governments worldwide, and I really hope to see more of it happen. And I think we could say the same about admin. How can you be employed at a place where you're also the one charging the money from everyone? So yeah.
You get 30 seconds to respond to anything Motad said.
Yeah, no, again, I don't disagree that we need to do our part to hold admin to what it says, right? But the way we do that is through transparency. The VSA is not going to have any power over administration to punish or do anything like that. What we can do is talk to administration about what they're doing and bring those concerns to the student body, right? In my platform is more direct communication with administration because I believe in this.
Thank you both very much. Jess, do we have any questions from the chat for our vice president candidates?
Yeah, we have one in the Q&A and in the chat. Oh, we have a bunch now. Great. So it'll have to go to the first one, which is by an anonymous attendee who's wondering, the new legislative process by default sends legislation to committees for review. Is it unfair for the executive board members to assign legislation to committees, vote on legislation in Senate, chair the committees that review the legislation, and execute the legislation passed by Senate? Is a greater separation between Senate and exec needed? You'll each have 1 second, 1 minute to answer that question.
Am I starting?
Who started last time? I lost it. Yeah, I think so.
I think it's me.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it depends, right? Because the way legislation gets assigned currently is a vote of the full Senate. So exec is not by itself assigning to committees, right? And also, like I said, I want introduction of legislation to be a power solely held by senators, right? So yes, there are changes to be made, but I think voting on where legislation goes as an entire Senate and introducing that legislation through senators only and not exec board is change. I think that separates exec and makes exec kind of have the equivalent of a veto without having something that can clog VSA entirely, and also give senators purview over longer term projects while still giving exec some autonomy and some ability to function as elected representatives.
Todd, you can now have a minute to respond to that same question.
Thank you. As someone who served on the Senate for 2 years, I've been in a lot of these committees, and I've been someone who's like brought forth a lot of legislation and statements. And like a lot of the time, what happens is that the president or the VSA at large will say, "Oh, let's send this to this committee." And since those committees meet very infrequently, those statements and those works just get left for like centuries, and they just go undone. And I think this is a very big problem right now in the current legislation process, and it's something that we need to reform. And the way I see ourselves moving forward from the situation is seeing that VSA committees, like for example, the Committee on Equity and Inclusion, is filled with students who are, empowered with abilities to make changes in equity and inclusion spaces, because currently the VSA Committee on Equity and Inclusion has only a social consciousness fund that it can make changes on. But other than that, the admin doesn't consider any changes it makes for anything, right? So if we could make these committees actually powerful and make students in them actually want to go weekly and hold them frequently, then the legislation process can definitely accommodate that, and it would be a great space for people to make changes.
Okay, Ryan, you can now have 30 seconds to respond to Motad's answer.
Yeah, I don't really have anything. I agree that the legislative process can make a lot of good change.
Okay, awesome. Motad, you can have 30 seconds to respond more if you would like.
Yeah, same, I'll pass.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much to both of you. I think we're going to have to keep it moving. Unfortunately, thank you everyone who submitted your questions. If you guys would each like to give a 30-second closing statement, starting with Motad this time.
Yeah, so even today I met with various deans, and around our college we have a sentiment which talks about how admin doesn't do justice to its various members, whether they're employees, faculty members, or students, and it doesn't allow communication within us. And that's a lot of the reason why there's lack of change at this college, because even though the professors know that there's lack of food, and students know there's lack of food, and the employers know there's lack of food, the admin doesn't want to make changes. And ultimately, if we can combine our government together to combine voices, we can make a big difference, and that's what we're trying to do. So I hope I get your support. Thank you.
Ryan, you have 30 seconds for closing statement as well.
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of changes we need to make on this campus. I believe we need to bring back late night. I believe we need to invest more in the Poughkeepsie community. I believe we need to divest, obviously. And I believe that we need to treat our survivors better. I think that change is long overdue, and I think it is something that we desperately need. I truly believe we can do that as a VSA, and I think we can do that just by making administration transparent. And I hope that together we can start making those changes and making students' lives better on this campus. I hope I have your vote.
Thank you very much to both of our candidates for the vice president position. We are now going to move on to the chair of equity and inclusion position. for which I believe we have one candidate. Leslie, if you would like to start with a 30-second opening statement, including your name, pronouns, and the position you're running for.
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Leslie. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a rising sophomore majoring in urban studies and sociology. I'm currently an intern for the LGBTQ and Gender Resources Department, as well as I serve as the first year representative for Raymond House, and I'm running for the chair of Equity Inclusion.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so the first question is, you mentioned in your candidate statement that as it stands, you don't believe the VSA is meeting its goal of helping students. What changes do you believe are necessary that will be able to fix this situation? And you can have 1 minute to answer that question.
Yes, so I believe centralizing student activism efforts is really essential in order to make VSA a functioning institution that actually advocates for student needs. I think as it stands, VSA currently, kind of serves as a second arm of administration and doesn't work to actively pursue students' needs and actually advocate for them. And I think also just ensuring that student activists have a liaison to administration that actively pushes and advocates for their needs instead of solely only working in collaboration is really vital to that. Also, just increasing transparency and ensuring that what happens in committee meetings and what happens in meetings with admin in different committees such as BERT or CIE are reported to students, and there's an active flow of proactive communication and transparency.
Thank you very much. The next question is, there are many barriers to equity and inclusion in the college experience. What do you see as one of the most major of these obstacles, and how would you begin to address this barrier you have identified?
Yeah, as I stated before, I think, actively administration hearing student concerns and needs is something that definitely is a barrier to equity and inclusion. And not only is communication an issue, but admin actually, following up with these issues and ensuring that barriers to equity and inclusion, are lifted. And I think, being in the position of like the chair and being able to be a part of these conversations is integral to advocating for student needs.
Awesome, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the chat, Jess?
Yeah, this might be, it came in at 8:33, so that seems like it's for you. So we have a content warning that it's going to discuss sexual assault, and the anonymous attendee is wondering, it's clear that the Vassar administration is lacking in motivation when it comes to accountability for those accused of serious offenses such as sexual assault. What would you promise to do in order to help survivors and ensure that Vassar administration responds appropriately?
Yes, so I think a primary thing that I would do is definitely to work with SAVP and see how survivors are treated on campus, and to advocate for reform, not only in the Title IX process, but in how we treat in how we treat the process by which by which survivors are treated. And I think definitely advocating for more resources, advocating for transparency in how these resources are allocated and how survivors are able to just be safe and be comfortable in their environment.
Great, thank you very much. Would you like to give a 30-second closing statement?
Yeah, so I really think that the position of chair in equity inclusion is a great position in order to advocate and really work for student needs, as it's in very close contact with a lot of admin committees, and I hope to be able to pursue that and work for you and constituents. So I hope I am able to have your support.
Great, thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak with us. Next up, we have the Chair of Residential Affairs position, for which I believe we have 3 candidates. Are you all here? Yes, okay, it looks like it. In that case, we're going to start with, as before, a quick 30-second opening statement from each of you with your name, pronouns, and position you're running for. If you would like to start, Aishna, that would be great.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashna. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm a sophomore from India, currently running for chair of residential affairs. I'm majoring in economics and art history, and one of the main reasons I'm running for chair of residential affairs is because I am currently the president of Maine, and I learned a lot about how residential life essentially works at VSA, and I realized a lot of structural problems that we have in housing, such as just having like better bathrooms, or like in Maine having doors in the showers
Your time is
instead of
up.
just curtains.
Your time is up. Could you please finish your statement?
Oh, I'm so sorry. But yeah, I would also love to work for food insecurity at VSA and work towards reforming VSA to create a more democratic, efficient, and inclusive representation of our student body. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's move on to Lola, if you wouldn't mind giving a 30-second statement.
Hi, I'm Lola. I use she, her, hers. I am a rising junior STS major with a correlate in chemistry, and I'm from El Paso, Texas. Throughout my 2 years here, I've been working as a VSA intern, and I'm a member of the women's track team. And I'm currently serving as Davison House's programming director, which has given me a unique experience in seeing how the residential houses work and how we can better improve the lives of our students here.
Awesome, thank you. Adam, would you like to give a 30-second statement?
Yes. Hi, my name's Adam Weil. I use he, him. I'm a junior, going to be a senior next year. I'm an education and history double major. Currently, I'm in the HSA of Cushing, and last year I was a student fellow. And the main reason why I'm running for chair of residential affairs is because I want to continue work with administration to create more spaces in our residential system that allows for more voices to be brought forward so we can have a more equitable and diverse experience in our housing.
Awesome, thank you all. We're going to start with the first question, and with this question we'll start with Lola and then go to Adam and then back to Ashna. The first question, and you're going to get a minute each to talk, and then you'll each get 30 seconds to respond after everyone else is gone in the same order. The first question is, the chair of residential affairs sits on the dining committee, and dining related issues have been very relevant for many students, especially this year. What specific actions will you advocate for to improve dining on campus for students?
This year, because of the pandemic, we've seen limited food options for our residents. And especially this year, we've seen that there are very few inclusive options for vegans and vegetarians and those with food allergies. And as chair of residential affairs, I would advocate for more inclusive options for everyone. I would like to increase food swipes at retreat so that people have more access there. And I would also like to submit more forms to the students to see their responses for how we can improve dining, because there are a lot of problems right now that we would like to get fixed. And I would love to bring back late night. As someone who has a late night lab, I usually don't have dinner on Thursday nights, and I would love to have late night open for students who don't have the option to go have dinner on those nights and are maybe forced to purchase food on those nights that they can't go.
Thank you very much. Adam, if you'd like to respond to the same question for 1 minute.
Yeah, when you ask this question, the way that I really thought about it is just through a conversation. I would love to have more of like a transparent conversation with our dining services of how it works and like why the decisions they make happen. I think that's where a lot of our issues and our disconnect lies, like why they make certain decisions. So I'd love to have these conversations to have more of an idea of why things are happening with our dining services. Like late night is a good example, like why was that taken away? I think as a student, we feel like we have a lot of power in the situation. We totally do, but I think we also have to acknowledge the other people in these situations and having conversations with them, with our dining staff, with how Vassar's paying for our food, and talking about like what is happening, why is that happening, and then understanding how we can reform things and change things, I think is really important first.
Thank you very much. Aishna, if you would like to talk for a minute, thank you.
Yeah, so food insecurity at VSA is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I wrote about it in my candidate statement as well. Literally 2 days ago, I had a 20-minute conversation with my house advisor about how we can work to improve dining at VSA. And some things that I definitely would want to do, especially as an international student who's also vegetarian, is to include a lot more vegetarian, vegan, and just inclusive food options. Just make the D's a more inclusive space for people that don't eat conventional American food as well. And also to have late night back open again, and also to understand and fix the structural problems that are currently in our food services, where workers have to do we have to do night and morning shifts, and that's why we can't have late night. So I would like to work to kind of rectify those structural challenges as well that I've seen up close. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go back to Lola. If you would like to respond to anything anyone else said, you have 30 seconds in which to do so.
Yeah, I would just like to echo what the rest of my people are saying. I would love to work with the dining committees and administrators to see how we can work out the shifts for the employees there so that there can be a late night, and also to make their hours more equitable and efficient for them, because they're working so many hours right now, and I wish we could show more ways to appreciate them, and working them so many hours a day is not okay.
Awesome. Adam, if you'd like to respond to anything, you have 30 seconds as well.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really thankful that we're having this conversation. I want to thank Lola and the other candidates. Anisha, I'm saying your name correctly. If I'm not, I'm so sorry. Of just bringing this up of how we're having a correct conversation around this, and knowing that there are many factors that go into this food dining, and we have to really acknowledge that, and we can't just be making these decisions. We have to understand there are many parties involved. Yeah, and I also have worked with my house advisor and talking about food and why things happen, and I have a more behind the scenes capture of why certain things happen. So that's why I brought up the points of there are many people in the equation.
Thank you. Aishna, you also can have 30 seconds to respond if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. We've got one more question, and this time we're going to start with Adam, then go to Aishna, then to Lola. And this question is, the Chair of Residential Affairs is the primary liaison to the Safety and Security Advisory Council from the VSA. This year's VSA Senate has discussed issues arising with safety and security in regards to org conduct and how they interact with students. Where do you believe safety and security's role begins and ends on campus, and how will you work to improve their relationship with students?
Wow, another great question being thrown out here. Okay, so how I personally feel safety and security really needs to interact with students is, I think for me, everything really boils down to this human connection that we're all living on this shared community together. And I think just understanding expectations that are set, and then looking at those expectations and re-examining them. So safety and security has been on this campus for a while, and what are their expectations with our student organizations, and where do we see these disconnects? So I think just looking at what is already set first is really important, and then we can build on to what we need to change with safety and security. My personal stance is that safety and security should take more of a backseat and is there to keep us safe, not to surveil us. But that's what I would like to explore more, is what is the approaches already being taken, and then what do we want to change about them?
Thank you very much. Aishna, if you'd like to speak as well.
Yeah. I'm definitely appalled by some of the things that I've seen up close with safety and security on this campus. One of my friends was hanging posters around in Maine, and just the way that they, I think hunting would be the accurate word that I would use to describe the situation, where they went through all of his personal records, checked his pod. My name is literally blackened out in an email just because even though I didn't have anything to do with the issue at all. So I've seen up close just how atrocious their behavior is. And what I would also want to do is, through the reforms that we're planning, or at least that we want to enforce in the VSA, where we are kind of holding security accountable instead of the admin kind of just having power over them. That's something that I also want to work through and just have better support to students that are being targeted or that were kind of approached by safety and security. I would like to make it a better environment for the students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lola, if you would like to answer.
Yeah, I would say that my position on safety and security is that it should be here to protect us rather than punish us. I think the patrolling that they do is great, and I do feel very safe on campus as a woman walking around late at night or moving around. But like, I don't feel that that safety and security should try to punish students for perceived parties right now, or for like alcohol that they might see outdoors at an event like they just saw with Ultimate Frisbee and the whole fiasco of what's going on with them, which I don't think is right at all. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that they should be trying to get us in trouble for being college students and enjoying each other while we can, and especially in organizations when you have to get approval to have your event in the first place. And I just think that they shouldn't be trying to punish us.
Thank you all very much for those thoughtful responses. Now we're going to go back down the line. If anyone would like to respond to anything anyone else said, you will have 30 seconds to do so, starting with Adam.
I'm good, thank you.
Aishna?
Yeah, I definitely want to reiterate what Lola said. I definitely do think that we should security should be working for our safety. They shouldn't be punishing us or running after org parties or even things like smoking on campus. They shouldn't be getting us in trouble for that. It should definitely be a much better environment and a much better relationship with security, where I think their role has kind of should be well defined and better used for security, not for persecution.
Your time is up.
Yeah, let's try to stick to the times, guys. We're already behind schedule because of the technical difficulties at the beginning. I'm sorry to hurry people along. Lola, do you have anything you'd like to respond with 30 seconds?
Yeah, as chair of residential affairs, I definitely want to facilitate a much better relationship with safety and security and air all of the concerns that have been brought up tonight about ensuring that students feel safe without being afraid that their actions might be misconstrued or they may be punished for just kind of behaving like normal college students in the sense of like having fun outdoors instead of being afraid that they're going to be chased away and be in trouble.
Okay, thank you all very much. Jess, do we have any questions from the chat for the candidates for Chair of Residential Affairs?
No, we should be good to move on to closing statements.
Okay, awesome, thank you. As Jess said, we will move on to closing statements, and we will go back to starting with Aishna, if you want to have a 30-second closing statement.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, sorry to close off, I just want to say that I just like to make VSA a more democratic, a more inclusive organization through reforming it, where we can hold admin more accountable, give more power back to the students, to the senators, and really just create a better and more supportive environment for all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lola, would you like to give a 30-second closing statement?
Yes, as chair of residential affairs, I will expand residential protections of victims on campus, something that I am deeply passionate about, especially after what's happened on the track team. I will also remove bugs and pests from dorms because mice in dorms is unacceptable. I would also like to reform service request processes because they don't work. I would also like to improve dining as previously stated, and I would love to increase the support of house teams so that next year we can have early positive residential experience.
Thank you very much. Adam, if you'd like to give a closing statement.
All right, so I should like to say that I've served 2 years on house teams, so I really understand the systems, both through administration by being HSA and working with an HA, and through being a student fellow. I really think of house teams as a central fixture of promoting change, and how do we look at those systems and make sure they're supported in the correct way to create changes in our houses. And then really looking at the micro versus the macro, I'm really about the human connection and the human level, and making sure that we examine and understand and care for the individual actors within our residential systems.
Okay, thank you very much to all of our candidates for the Chair of Residential Affairs position. And the next position we have is Chair of Organizations. So I think we can move straight on to that. If you guys are here, we can start with 30-second opening statements. Remember to please include your name, your pronouns, and the position you're running for. And Cece, if you would like to start that. Is Cece not here? Cece might not be here, in which case, Christine, would you like to start with a 30-second opening statement?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Carol Chung. I usually have her pronouns, and I'm in the class of 2024, and I'm running for Chair of Orgs. I'm running because as my role as VSA Finance Intern this past year, I've worked directly with orgs, and I've seen really firsthand how passionate org leadership has been to provide programming, even despite the really restrictive COVID restrictions this past year. And this has really inspired me to continue working more directly with them to provide bigger and better events as we transition to a more normal semester.
Thank you very much. I think we can get right into the first question, which is, thanks to the pandemic, many organizations have likely lost much of their institutional memory in terms of how to organize events and programming, along with much of their engagement from students. How will you support orgs in returning to what will hopefully be a much more normal semester in terms of programming? And you can have 1 minute to answer that. Thank you.
I think, as we have all seen, due to recent events in VSA, there's been a lot of lack of communication between admin and the student body. And I think what's really important to, as you say, get students back on track to working on their pre-pandemic capacity as members or leadership of orgs is to know all of the information as to how to run a student organization at an institution like VSA. So I think one of my first things I would do as Chair of Orgs is to meet with admin and really set down all of the past precedents as to, whether that's regulations or conduct and all of that sort of stuff, and really communicate that with students. And if there's any feedback from students, I would 100% communicate that back with admin and start a dialogue there.
Thank you very much for that response. We can move on to the next question, which is, one of your roles is serving as a point person for pre-orgs who seek to obtain full org status. How do you plan to guide pre-orgs through this process, and what criteria would you use to evaluate if a pre-org is ready to become a full org?
I think VSA students are known for their varied interests, and it is obviously important that all of those interests are met by people who are interested in those things. And yeah, so I think when evaluating when an organization wants to formally become a pre-org, I would probably think about how big of an impact it would have on the student body, and how much potential, how much future is there for this org. How is this org only going to serve members of that particular year, or are they going to serve, are they potentially going to last for a long time at VSA? And that's probably the criteria I would first start when evaluating pre-org statuses.
Awesome, thank you very much. Jess, do we have any questions from the chat?
No, we should be good to move on to the closing statement.
Awesome. As Jess said, if you'd like to give a 30-second closing statement, Christine, feel free.
Yeah, I would just like to say, aside from the politics of the VSA, I, as a member of the student body, really just want to see the VSA student body flourish as we transition to a more normal time. So I would really love to do any part I can in facilitating bigger events and more normal events, and just to see everyone on campus happy.
Thank you very much, Christine. I think we actually have managed to get a little bit ahead of schedule now. We've caught up after the technical difficulties at the beginning. And our next position is the Chair of Finance, which is not scheduled to begin until 9:05. So I think we'll take a quick 5-minute break. And if the candidates for the Chair of Finance could be ready to get started right at 9:05, that would be great. Thank you, everybody. Okay, hello, everyone. I think it's time to get started with the candidates for the Chair of Finance position. I believe we have 3. If you all can take a second to get ready to get into some opening statements. Again, with these opening statements, if you would like to take 30 seconds to please introduce yourself, include your name, your pronouns, and the position you're running for, that would be great. Thank you. Let's start with Alexis.
Sure. My name is Alexis Reyes. I'm a rising senior. I'm a physics major in French correlate if they stop playing with my emotions. Running for the Chair of Finance, obviously, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
Thank you very much. Mafas, if you would like to give a 30-minute opening statement, or 30 seconds, sorry.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Mafaz. I use he, him, his, and I would like to serve as your Chair of Finance for the next academic year. And my whole strategy is to go ahead and use the money that you guys have paid Vassar responsibly and make sure that it impacts the community and the whole student body as a whole, and to make sure that things like what happened with the whole fish tank situation don't rise again, and there is transparency between us, the VSA, and the student body.
Thank you very much. Valeria, if you would like to give a 30-second opening statement.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Valeria. I'm a rising senior, so class of 2022. I use she, her, hers, and I'm a sociology major. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and I've been a part of the VSA my freshman year as a finance committee member, and then this year as a current finance committee intern. Part of my platform is really also similar to Mafaz, kind of wanting to avoid another Fishgate conspiracy, and also improving the accessibility of students' access to the resources that they have as members of the VSA and of Vassar as a whole.
Awesome, thank you all very much. Next, we're going to go into questions where you will each get 1 minute to respond to the question, and then if you would like it, 30 seconds to respond to each other's answers. We're going to start with Mafaz for this one, which is the process for applying for VSA funding and or appealing finance committee decisions is often described as complex and convoluted. How do you go about clarifying the process and ensuring that students know what must be done in order to secure the funding they need to implement programming?
For sure. I think one of the strategies would be to go ahead and have these open forums, which are open to the whole campus, instead of just like orgs. That way, everyone is kind of aware of how money can be used, what like the different funds that we have stand for. And that way, like everyone is a little bit more aware of like how everything is happening. I'm a CS major. So like, I think an interesting aspect would be to go ahead and add a website, a VSA Finance website, which is probably going to be very easy to do with Vassar and WordPress. So doing that would allow us to kind of put all these forms, push them to the main audience, push them to everyone where they're easily accessible. Because I can agree, I think they're kind of pretty hard to find because they're in a bunch of folders in Google Drive. So just having a website where we have all these forms, we have all the instructions, and there's an explanation for all the forms, I think would be a nice addition to the whole finance side of things.
Great, thank you very much. Valeria, would you also like to give a 1 minute response?
Yeah, so I currently work a lot with treasurers, and I know that the timeline for applying for funds, what kind of funds, what kind of applications fall under which categories can be really difficult for them to navigate. I do also understand that the current system we use, which is very Google Drive heavy, is pretty difficult, especially if you're not a treasurer, then you don't necessarily have access to those because you're not receiving emails from the chair of finance right now. So ideally, I just like to include like an overall better approach to the accessibility of students to these resources, because a lot of times there are unfortunately some student orgs that have treasurers that aren't the best performing, and so because of that the entire org suffers. So this could, like Mufaz said, be more accessible on an improved VSA website. Also through social media like Instagram, I've seen examples of other student governments at other colleges that have fantastic information that is easily accessible through social media platforms. But yeah, definitely just like improving the overall understanding of the timeline for the applications, because that can be very confusing and that can ultimately just impact an entire application altogether.
Great, thanks a lot. Alexis, if you'd like to give a response as well, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to expand on actually both of Mafaz and Valeria had said. I honestly believe the chair of finance really should just be an advisor to the treasurer. So as it stands right now, our policies are on 33-page PDFs on Google Drive, or like the SPF and all these funds. Their definitions are on huge blocks of text that honestly is just complicated to read. So what I want to do as chair of if I'm chair of finance is to essentially be the expert on hand for that treasurer. So they want to spend money on this certain expense. They tell me what it is. Ideally, I would know exactly where it goes to get it best approved. Second, I just want to be their advocate to the Senate, because most treasurers, when they're coming in new, they see the VSA as this huge, like this messy organization with very opaque paths to actually get funding passed. So as chair of finance, I want to be your advocate, and I just want to be your expert to make sure that instead of wasting time on me, you're spending your time doing something fun.
Thank you all very much. We're now going to go back through, and if each of you would like, you can have 30 seconds to respond to something someone else had said, and we'll start again with Mafaz.
Yeah, just to comment on what Alexis just said, I know like a lot of our processes are complicated. So I think not processes and like what each fund stands for is also complicated, especially when you have a new treasurer coming in that hasn't had like experience like that before. So I think definitely going back to my point about the website, putting that on a website, putting it in layman's term would be very helpful, I think, for people. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Valeria, would you like to respond to anything anyone else has said?
Yeah, I especially like to respond to what Alexis would say. Though I feel Nicole, the current chair of finance, is doing fantastic at being a resource and a point of advocacy for all the current organizations. There are over 100 VSA student organizations that have treasurers, and frankly, it's very ineffective to kind of be that main point of communication for them. So ideally, I'd like all of this information to be readily accessible and digestible for them so that they can avoid having to kind of plan around my office hours, trying to wait for my emails, because it can be incredibly inefficient in the long run. And I just want the student organization to succeed. So
Alexis, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I agree with Valeria's point of making a website just make that information very clear and digestible for people. To respond to Valeria's point, what I mean be their expert and their advocate does not necessarily mean, oh, come to my office hours, I'll hold your hand. It necessarily means, here's a one-page PDF on how to apply for this fund. Here is a one-pager on how to interact with the VSA finance, not, as I said, to baby you, but to just put in a put in a request, and that's it. You don't have to do too much to get funding.
Thank you all very much for those thoughtful answers. We're going to move on to the second question, and this time we are going to start with Valeria. And the question is, as orgs return to more normal spending post-COVID, the VSA's budget may be more stretched than in recent years. How will you prioritize which orgs and which events to allocate funds to?
yeah, I mean, overall, the way that funding kind of happens right now is really just focusing on if the organization has been spending appropriately and if we feel that they'll be responsible with the purchasing, especially because this money is coming from student activity fees that students pay every year. And so really just making sure that the way that students present their applications is detailed and organized, because we have received applications from organizations that don't even have a clear budget sheet. So we don't even know how they've been spending their money. And because this is student money, I would like to really increase the way that they're being responsible for it and kind of just keeping track of their things. I feel like VSA finance shouldn't really be taking charge of that, because treasurers are at least expected to keep up with this minimal transaction history. And besides that, obviously just looking at things like how these events impact the campus, the specific org community based on what their event is hoping to do. And yeah, I mean, ideally, I would like to put a lot of these applications towards the finance committee, because it does include a diverse student group on campus. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Alexis, would you like to respond to the same question as well?
Certainly. So, well, I have to expand on Valeria's point. Just basic financial management, making sure that orgs are able to spend or are reasonably spending their money. It is students' money after all. But to expand on it a bit further, I'd actually like to push the administration to increase our budget even more for next semester. As I said in my campaign statement, they currently take $50 away from the student activities fee around 410. If next year we have 2,400 students, that's $120,000 that we're missing out on. So next year, our budget is definitely going to go up. Our expenses are definitely going to go up. So pushing the administration to at least reduce it by half to give the VSA at least $60,000 more in spending would be a huge boost. But just to recap, orgs have to be spending their money responsibly. It is a student's money to create a process, or at least maintain Nicole's process of just ensuring that orgs are keeping to the mark and not being overly extravagant with their expenses. And 3, push the administration to actually increase our budget.
Thank you very much. Mafaz, would you like to respond to the same question?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I think when I am evaluating an application while sitting on finance committee, I like to really think about how much impact this will bring to our whole campus community. You know, sometimes there are applications, not to get into specific of things, where that are asking for a lot of money, but they're not impacting a large amount of people on campus. And so like there are times where you have to put your foot down and say no, but there's also times where we have to kind of really look at what previous impacts this organization has had on campus and kind of almost kind of trust them, because this is their money. I don't want to hold their money just because I think this is a bad idea. So there is the whole committee there to discuss that. But this idea of just making sure that everyone is using the money wisely and has that impact on campus that they should have. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth allocating for. I think an example would that be for like the brew. The brew was a huge allocation, and it was something that we thought would have a good impact on the whole campus. So we went ahead and we did it, and I voted for it.
Thank you all very much for those thoughtful answers. Now we're going to go back through. If each of you would like, you can have 30 seconds to respond to anything anyone else has said. We'll start again with Valeria.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to expand on Alexis's point about the way that the administration has a part of our VSA activity fee. And so basically that was a negotiation that happened years ago between another chair of finance. And so that's actually up for renegotiation this next fiscal year, so fiscal year 2022. And so ideally, I'd like for the administration to have 0 contribution from that. And I'd actually like to lower the overall fee, because each year we've actually had a surplus of funds that student organizations have access to. And that includes money that's also sitting in like funds. So I'd rather just lower the fee and also cut their administration access at least.
Thank you very much. Alexis, would you like to respond to anything? You have 30 seconds.
It was my point with the 120,000 that the school is taking. So of course I agree with Valeria that the administration ideally should have 0, but knowing the administration, they're going to say, oh, well, let's have half, or, you know, the VSA runs as a surplus, you don't need all the money. But to expand on Valeria's point, I'd actually would not suggest decreasing the student activity fee, because let's say next year our budget potentially goes red. What I would say is that instead of decreasing the fee, that we should just process refunds as if what we did last year during the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Mafaz, would you like to respond to anything anyone else has said?
Yeah, I think both candidates bring up really good points about how we should spend like the surplus and how the student activity fee should be handled. And yeah, I think if it's definitely up for debate about how much they should have, there should be I would definitely advocate to have as much as possible be given to the students. Obviously, you have to pick your battles and you can't fight them all, because that's just not going to get you anywhere. So trying to be, I don't know, good about it and strategic about it.
Thank you all very much for your answers to the questions. Jess, do we have any more questions from the chat?
Yeah, we do. So an anonymous attendee says, as I understand it, although the Vice President oversees the operations budget, recent VSA restructuring has given Senate the power to approve of large expenses. How will you ensure fiscal responsibility within the VSA as a whole? You guys should each have a minute to answer that question, and I think we'll start with Mafaz.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I think one of the things I have included in my platform is to go ahead and have a meeting with both the exec board and the Senate in one place, where we kind of all go over the finance bylaws. That way everyone knows what exactly is said in the bylaws and like how to interpret them. That way we all have the same understanding of the bylaws. That way, if there's some overreach by the Senate or some overreach by the exec board, it can be squashed, because we know like this is what the terms that we agreed on in the beginning of the year. So kind of just having that platform or that meeting where we kind of discuss everything about how we interpret the laws and what's allowed and what's not allowed, I think would be really good to like get rid of that confusion and kind of also get rid of the distrust that might arise with another like the fish tank situation that just occurred. Yeah.
Great, why don't we go to Alexis?
I think a good solution for this is just for large expenses that not only does, we should go to like a normal org. So let's say the VSA wants to buy another $2,000 fish tank or $500 fish tank. It should go to the finance committee. The finance committee ideally should shoot it down, but if they don't, then it should go to the Senate at large. If it's a big expense, again, it's the students' money. If it's a big expense, the Senate as a whole should approve it. Like I have experience, part of the question is about fiscal responsibility as a VSA as a whole. I have experience with fiscal responsibility. So with VCMS, or I'm the equipment officer for VCMS, so I spend very limited funds to ensure that our EMTs are safe in the field when we're responding to calls. I've had to bother so many people in health services not only secure that 5-figure budget, but to ensure that they're not trying to skimp out on us, or they're not trying to say that, oh well, this is too much money. But the whole point of the VSA is just to ensure that this is all responsible.
Thank you. Now it's your turn, Valeria.
Yeah, I think with this, especially kind of what Alexis had said, a lot of more emphasis on the finance committee, specifically because these are students who are interested in the financial expenditures of the VSA and are willing to really hear out applications by student orgs and even the actual VSAs like Senate and Executive Board. So ideally, this would kind of include like having these expenditures shared with them, because although senators are in that position and like I am happy that they have these like larger responsibilities than before, I still think it's really good to have more student input regarding this, because a lot of the time I feel like figures can kind of really spearhead a financial purchase, and the ideas and the sentiment behind them can get really lost, and people forget the kind of weight that these financial purchases can have, especially just disregarding the community that they're supposed to affect. Is it really going to actually affect those communities? Like the fish tank thing, like they thought that more students would be seeing it, but honestly, who really goes to the VSA office? Kind of just things like that. And as chair of finance, I'd like to really bring those things back into perspective when making these larger purchases.
Ted, do you want to do another round of student questions, or are we in time?
I think we are actually over time, unfortunately. So if each of you would like to give a 30-second closing statement, that would be great. And we can start with, I believe it is Valeria.
Yeah, so ideally I'd like to be the chair of finance for next year. I have the experience as a member of the finance committee and as a current VSA finance intern. I understand the expectations and obligations of the role that may not be as well known, especially if you aren't really seeing the chair of finance in action behind the scenes. I've been in office hours every time with Nicole, and I hear all of the various questions that are constantly repeated and brought by treasurers and all student orgs. I've engaged with treasurers through Amazon questions and other general orders that need to be placed, so I feel like I have a really good grasp of this, but I also understand what really needs to be changed, and I'd like to push for that.
Thank you very much. Mufaz, would you like to give a closing statement?
For sure, yeah. I would also love to be your chair of finance for the next academic year. I know there's a lot of responsibility because this is your money. This is money that students have worked hard for, their families have worked hard for. So I want to make sure that we're using it responsibly. And there's also other things that I would like to make sure that the chair of finance turns into, where there's more like involvement with other issues that exist in our campus society, and just making sure that those are all reflected.
Thank you very much. Alexis, would you like to give a closing statement?
Well, I'd love to be your chair of finance just for the biggest reason. I have the experience of pushing for administration to give us more funds, to push for better amenities for our students. So increasing Arlington Bucks to $200, pushing to increase the Founders Day budget by $15,000, ensuring that the VSA's funds are as transparent as possible, and that treasurers can come to us or come to the VSA, or me preferably, to say that, hey, or to at least process their budget as seamlessly as possible. So please vote for me as chair of finance.
Okay, I would like to say thank you very much to all of our candidates for the chair of finance for answering the questions, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions in the chat. Next, we're going to move on to the candidates for the chair of academics. And again, we're going to start with 30-second opening statements in which you should please include your name, your pronouns, and the position that you are running for. And Andrew, if you would like to start with that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Andrew. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a Greek and Roman Studies major. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm running to be your chair of academics for next year. I currently sit as a senator on for the class of 2022, where I sit on the academics committee and also sit on the movement for affordable textbooks, as well as other things. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Harman, would you like to give a 30-second opening statement as well?
Sure. Hi, my name is Herman Singh. The class of 2023. I use he, him, his. I'm an international student. I'm originally from Punjab, India, and I'm majoring in physics. I'll also be on the pre-med track. And yeah, I'm running to be the chair of academics for the 2021-2022 academic year. And yeah, apart from this, I'm also the president of the Sikh Student Association, involved in the transitions program. I'm also heavily involved in the international STEM student community at VSA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both very much for your statements. We're going to start with the first question. You will each get a minute to respond and then 30 seconds to respond to each other's answers if you would like. And we're going to start with Herman. The first question is, one important academic issue for many students is high textbook prices. What do you see as the most feasible way to combat this issue?
I think textbook prices was the thing that you just said. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it properly, but I'll just roll with that. So yeah, textbook price, I think the fundamental thing is you need more funding. Yeah, if we have more funds, we can provide students with the funds to get those kind of textbooks. And for that, you just have to talk to administration, give them the numbers, give them facts. So I would advocate for like conducting surveys and research and like putting out those ideas, like conducting campus-wide surveys about like how many students struggle with that, like work, because there are already programs put in place like through transitions and stuff that I have been involved with. But I feel like we need to increase that kind of program and increase the kind of funding that's available for it. And just, yeah, getting that data, getting that idea of like how many students are struggling will be really helpful before we pitch something like that to the administration. And just like, yeah, going to administration with straight up numbers, like this is what we need and this amount of funds we need, and really advocating for it. I think that would be a great idea on getting more textbook funds.
Thank you very much. And yeah, definitely let me know if I'm ever too quiet and you can't hear the question. I'll always be happy to repeat anything. Sorry about that. Andrew, if you'd like to answer the same question, you have a minute as well.
Yeah, so this year it's become even more apparent, if it wasn't before, that textbooks and affordability has become a serious problem. Not even textbooks, all course material. I know I've personally felt astounded by the high price of textbooks. For example, I had to spend $250 on a code for one of my Spanish classes, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I am currently working with the Movement for Affordable Textbooks, which is a committee made up of faculty members and administrators, to try to determine the root cause of textbook problems and textbook accessibility. We're currently building a survey that hints at the root causes of this and tries to determine how lack of textbook accessibility has affected VSA students' social and academic life. Yeah.
Thank you both very much. If you'd like, you can both have 30 seconds to respond to anything the other person said. We'll go back to Herman first.
Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah. Wait, can I ask a question in this part from the other side or no?
I think so. Feel free. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to ask Andrew, like, how's the survey going and everything? And are you guys close to getting a result, or are the results already published? And like, yeah, like how's the whole program thing going for like getting the knowledge? And yeah, basically how's the survey going? That's the question.
Can I just respond to that right now?
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, so we are currently working on the survey. We have a meeting later this week about it, just to finalize some things. We'll be sending that out, I imagine, pretty shortly. We've taken inspiration from similar surveys like Williams College. Williams College is actually a unique case because they have a situation where They provide students with financial aid, a stipend to provide free textbooks for their students. And so we're looking at that, working with the administration, seeing how we can accomplish that and if we can try to replicate something similar. Yeah, and so if I was chair of academics, I'd just like to continue that approach as well.
Okay, thank you both very much for the discussion. I'm glad we can talk about this. Okay, the next question, which we're going to go back to starting with Andrew for, is classes will likely look very different next semester with a return to in-person learning. What infrastructure, if any, would you like to see carry over from the past few semesters of remote learning?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because obviously COVID has complicated so many things about classes, but it's also opened up some good opportunities. For example, having the option of office hours be on Zoom is good considering accessibility problems and things like that. Furthermore, I think that we should keep the universal NRO policy that was implemented during COVID. I think that we should fight to expand the old NROs. I don't think we should go back. And then conversely, I think that we need to fight to stop the attempted restriction of overloads that is currently happening among the administration.
All right, thank you very much. Herman, if you would also like to respond to that same question for 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, COVID definitely pretty much made everything at a standstill, but there were some things, especially the point that was raised, that I was going to raise, but Andrew raised it for me, was having office hours via Zoom, and even having sometimes for students who aren't able to make it to classes, sometimes having the ability to attend classes via Zoom. It's going to be a bit of a logistical challenge considering how inclined professors will be to make online classes for 2 to 3 students. But yeah, something like that. And also grading. I think there needs to be uniformity in terms of leniency in certain cases, because while COVID happened, there wasn't a uniform stretch of we are gonna do this. Professors didn't have a uniformity in terms of, okay, they're gonna do A or A minus, because some professors did their own thing, because college never said anything particular and anything uniform. So establishing that uniform standards for kind of grading and policies and accessible NRs would be helpful.
Great. Thank you very much. Andrew, if you'd like, you can have 30 seconds to respond to anything that was said.
Yeah, I think Harman brings up some really great points, especially with uniformity, because right now the grading policies from department to department are really arbitrary, and some departments allow NROs for some classes and some departments don't. So I think that we need to kind of sort that out and have a universal policy that reflects all departments and all classes.
Harman, if you would like to respond to anything that's been said, you can have 30 seconds as well.
Yeah, it's just been very frustrating, especially as a student. The other students I've talked to, just getting those emails from the Dean of Studies for Office, for example, you can NRO classes, we recommend it, but then having to deal with the fact that you can't NRO certain classes, and the fact that some professors are not going to be as lenient as the other professors. So yeah, just expanding on what I just said before, providing that to students, and especially the pre-reg system. You're not allowed to pre-reg if you have outstanding balances. We really need to change that.
Great, thank you both so much. Jess, do we have any questions from the chat?
No, we should be good to move on.
Okay, awesome. In that case, I think we will go straight into closing statements. Harman, if you would like to start with a 30-second closing statement.
Yeah. Hi. Academics is probably the most important reason you're here, and I understand the importance of it. I think there can be significant change made if we all come together and advocate for the necessary changes. The college, despite the best potential, does not perform that good in most cases. So yeah, just accessible NROs, fair pre-registration, and I would also advocate for more sections for different classes, so it's not hard for you to get in. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew, you can now have a closing statement as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that as we transition to a more normal semester, I think it's really important to, or as chair of academics, to highlight problems that have arose or were exacerbated due to the pandemic, and that means expanding NROs, looking for solutions to expensive textbooks and course materials, and especially prioritizing the mental health of students, which has been such a problem throughout these past few semesters.
Okay, thank you very much to both of our candidates for the chair of academics. I think now we are right on time to move on to the chair of health and wellness, if we would like to get started with that. Actually, is the candidate for chair of health and wellness here? Or speak up if you are here, Nick. Okay, I don't think the candidate is here. We can wait a couple more minutes. As I said, we were right on schedule, so they might just be logging into Zoom. But if not, we can take a short break while we wait for the time for Chair of Programming and Traditions, which will start at 9:45.